Good morning, everyone. The committee will come to order. We are here this morning to review ongoing recovery efforts in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands in the wake of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, as well as efforts to rebuild the electric grids on those islands in a smarter and hopefully a more resilient manner. We're now over 2 months removed from when Hurricane Irma devastated St. Thomas and St. John on September 6th, and it's been nearly 60 days since Hurricane Maria hit St. Croix and Puerto Rico. It was just a little over a week ago that Senators Cassidy, Senator Franken, and I, along with Senator Carper, who was just here, and Senator Harris, as well as some of our House colleagues, visited both St. Thomas and Puerto Rico. I want to thank both governors, Governor Rossello and Governor Mapp, for your hospitality, the time that you gave us during that visit. It was incredibly important, I think, for all of us to see, to be on the ground, and to be hearing directly from you and those that you are working with. I know that some other members of our committee have traveled to Puerto Rico previously, and I thank them for that as well. What I think we certainly observed is that the destruction is still very, very evident. When you consider the totality of the recovery work that still needs to be done, I think in a word it can be said that it's overwhelming. It's one of those where do you even begin moments. And I think we certainly felt that in Puerto Rico, we felt that in USVI. I mentioned when we were there in Puerto Rico that I've seen my share of natural disasters, but really nothing like this, nothing like the scale that you see when you see an entire island that has been devastated. As we had an opportunity to be up in the air and fly over some of the impacted areas in Puerto Rico, it seemed like we never left an area that had not been not only hit but devastated in terms of the impact. We've put some posters up on the dais here. Over to my left here is a solar field that we flew over in Puerto Rico. You can see closer to the front the panels that remained intact, and while the resolution isn't that good, the impact to the arrays in the back, it just looked like somebody smashed through them. In front of Senator Cantwell here are solar panels, a field that we saw when we were in Puerto Rico, driving by, but again, seeing the impact there. Right below Senator Cortez Masto there is a picture of some apartments that we drove by in St. Thomas, where the buildings had been just blasted through from one side to the other. So a clean sweep through these apartment buildings. It was just extraordinary. Below Senator Heinrich there, you can see some of the devastation again in Puerto Rico. The blue tarps are certainly coming to be a symbol of the devastation that we see post-hurricane, not just here in the Caribbean, but certainly as we've seen the devastation following Harvey in Houston and in Florida. But I think you can see just how these properties have been impacted in a way and in a manner that is just, again, devastating. Below Senator Franken is an area that we toured where the road had been taken out by landslide. Not only did we see this particular scene, but another area where the only access to some 200 roads had been cut off by a horrible landslide, stranding homes on the other side. We had an opportunity to visit with a young woman whose home was on the other side, and she had not been able to visit her home since the hurricane had happened. A very, very touching story, one that I think all of us will remember for a long time. But I think we also recognize that while we were in Puerto Rico, looking at the damage from the landslides and appreciating that particularly in the interior where you have such mountainous areas, that this is still the raining season. And with the number of trees that have been taken down, the slope stability during the rainy months is very uncertain. And so the damage that we're seeing today may not be the damage that we're dealing with in days and weeks from now, knowing that more can happen. So again, very, very, very sobering. And when you look at this and realize that these pictures were taken just last week, it is clear evidence that there is much, much, much to do. But as daunting as the recovery effort is, I think it's matched by the spirit of those who live on the islands, and we saw that, we felt that. I don't know whether I'm doing some promoting here or not, but while we were over there in Puerto Rico, we were reminded that there is a resiliency in the people. Members have been given a can of soda this morning that was manufactured and bottled in Puerto Rico with the hashtag that says Fuerza Puerto Rico, which is Puerto Rico strong. So I thought that was pretty cool that even in the midst of all this, they were coming together, they were working to remind each of us of the resiliency of the people of Puerto Rico, the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands, that this is their home, and to reinforce our commitment to our fellow Americans that we need to do what we can to help rebuild these islands. Today's hearing will also look at ways to make the electric grids on the islands more resilient to future storms. I think we all agree that it makes no sense to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Stafford Act funding to rebuild these grids to pre-storm conditions as the Stafford Act currently requires. Puerto Rico's electric grid was already antiquated before the storms hit. So you really have to ask the question, why? Why would we rebuild it to that standard? I think that there's broad agreement. I've talked with colleagues on the other body and the other side of the aisle here. Congress needs to provide greater flexibility in how Stafford Act funds can be used. I certainly am going to work with my colleagues in the administration to help implement that change. We also know that more hurricanes will impact the islands in the years to come. We're going to see poles that will break, lines that will come down, roads and bridges that will wash out. Residents will face flooding and mudslides. Communities will be disconnected from each other and from a central grid. And some of that is the reality of living on an island in a tropical location. But again, the questions that we need to be probing are, what can we do about it now? Right now, restoring electricity is the immediate priority. It's been out for far too long, and it is harming the health of both local residents and their economy. And when I say health, I think about things like mental health. You think about being without power for 60 days plus. Think about what that means. We see pictures of kids who are trying to do their homework using the little flashlight of their cell phones. But in Puerto Rico, where we were, schools were not open. Schools were not open and have not been open for 2 months now. Think about what happens just from an educational perspective. So when we talk about health, I think we need to be more expansive in our understanding of what the impact to these islands has been. These conditions are awful, they're tragic, but they're also an opportunity for us to be working together to rebuild the grids in a smarter manner, whether through microgrids, distributed generation, burying the lines where possible, direct current versus alternative, some other manner. I think we need to be looking at this going forward with a few things in mind, making the grid more resilient to future weather events, and in case of damage from future storm, bringing that time frame for repair on the grid on par to what we see here in the United States. I think we recognize that any one of the 50 states here, whether you are on the mainland or like Hawaii or Alaska, apart from the continental United States, nowhere would we accept the fact that the residents have been without power for 2 months, particularly the numbers of people that we're talking about. But also we need to be working to bring down the overall cost of electricity, certainly compared to the pre-storm prices. We are fortunate to be joined by a very distinguished panel this morning, and we will have an equally distinguished panel as this one concludes. But these folks are here today to help us better understand the conditions on the ground, what more needs to be done at the federal level, and what a future electric grid could look like. All of our witnesses can be part of the solution, and I'm hopeful that this hearing will be a step in that direction. So I turn to Senator Cantwell for her opening remarks, and I look forward to a very informative discussion this morning. Senator Cantwell.